G'day, I'm Guy Allen, welcome to Motorcycle TV, and what we've got happening here behind us is Motorcycle Trader magazine is doing a bit of a feature shoot on 40 years of performance Triumph triples. So what we've got is the last of the Meriden bikes, the T160 750 Trident. We have the first of the real hero bikes from Hinckley, which is the 1994 Super 3 900, and we have the current 2014 Daytona 675R. These are wildly different machines, even though the intention of the day was very, very similar. And it's a reflection of the times. The bikes have become more focused and more specialised over time. You look at something like the T160, it's a big all-rounder, big friendly naked bike basically in today's terms. And the 94 bike, a bit more of a sporting edge to it, but really it's a sports tourer in current terminology, whereas the 675R, that is very much sharp, super sharp focused performance bike. It's a track bike, that's essentially what it's about. So let's talk a little bit about the bikes individually. The 1974-75 model T160, that was a last hurrah for Triumph, and it was a bit sad in a way that it allowed itself to get overrun by the Japanese industry, which was better run, better financed, and were pushing harder. The Honda 754, famously in 1969, really announced the death knell of bikes like the Trident, although they hung on for a surprising length of time. They dominated the Isle of Man for several years with the T160, and it even did quite well at Daytona. The basics are, it's just a sub 750 pushrod inline triple, 2 valves per cylinder, producing about 65 horses thereabouts. It's still surprisingly quite a nice ride today. It's got enough grunt to get around, but of course by current standards those Lockheed discs front and rear, they're not really up to the job, and they're typical 70s brakes. You get them wet and all of a sudden you lose a lot of stopping power. Having said all of that, while it's not the most powerful thing in the world, you obviously could tune them because they had quite a lot of race success. And as a ride on the road, even today, I've taken this out for a 3-day ride in the hills not so long ago. Really pleasant bike. Steers where you want it to. It's surprisingly stable. The suspension's okay given its age. And overall, if you're not trying to win any races, it's an enjoyable ride. So, let's talk about the Super 3. This is one of the rarest bikes in the Triumph post-war catalogue. Just 205 of them ever made. Now what separated them from the standard Daytona 900 was a fair bit of carbon fibre. It's positively dripping with it in some places, but they also sent the motor to Cosworth Engineering of Formula One fame and got them to hot up the motor for them. So that produced about 115 horses versus 98 for the standard engine. What it means is, in reality, is it's a slightly sharper edged engine than the standard 900. Some would say maybe not quite as road friendly, but it's certainly a bit more performance oriented. And it's got quite a unique growl to it. But like I say, it's really a sports tourer by modern standards. Something that did distinguish it is it also ran 6-piston Alcon made brakes, and they were way, way ahead of their time. They were very sharp brakes, good feel. They were actually surprisingly good for the mid-90s, and it took a while for a lot of other production bikes to catch up with those performance brakes. Still a fairly heavy bike. You're still talking about 210, 220 kilos once it's fully wet, very much like the 74 bike. They're almost the same weight. Hugely expensive at the time. It was right up there at the top of the Triumph catalogue at over $20,000 back in '94. The Super 3, sports tourer, that essentially sums up the Super 3. It's not the sharpest toy, even for its day, let alone right now. But funnily enough, tall people really love these bikes. They're a long, rangy bike to sit on, and they're an exceptionally comfortable distance bike. The fairing gives a lot of coverage, seating position's good, suspension's got a reasonably supple ride to it. There is actually reasonable quality suspension on it, sensational braking, enough performance, enough for it to be interesting, and in the case of the Super 3 in particular, hugely collectible, though they're not on the collectible radar yet, if that makes any sense. They're certainly very rare, and they were Triumph's hero bike for the day. So they're the key markers that will make it collectible. Last and far from least, the 675R Daytona. This is Triumph's latest triple-cylinder hero bike, producing about 128 horsepower, claims about 186 kilos fully wet, so it's significantly lighter than the other bikes, and it's more powerful. And we're talking a good 40 kilos less in reality. The interesting thing about this bike is I wouldn't accuse it of having cutting-edge technology necessarily. It's got a lot of very current technology, for example, really good Öhlins suspension, nice, sharp, crisp fuel injection, good electronics to back a lot of that up. Where this thing is clever is the overall packaging. What you end up with is a middleweight bike with very close to big bike performance, but in a package that's light and very flickable. So it's actually a real surprise packet on the road. You won't find yourself wanting for braking ability or performance on this bike, and it's a very sharp handler. The suspension gives you plenty of feedback, but it's not particularly harsh, surprisingly enough. It's quite a sophisticated setup. At about $16,000 on the road, this here is one of the top sport packages available, and in terms of bang for buck, very, very hard to beat. So if you really are looking for a good sports bike that's really a solo seater, definitely have one of these on your list. So there you have it. Triumph hasn't given up on performance bikes over the year. It's got quite a long, proud history. It's interesting that the T160 generation got raced comprehensively, and the current generation is very much a track-focused bike. That middle generation, well, they were really road machines, and this was at a time when Hinckley was just getting up on its feet again after the company being effectively dead for the best part of 20 years. Look for the full story in Motorcycle Trader magazine.